What's up, CAUSENETIC family?
Welcome to the CAUSENETIC podcast.
CAUSENETIC may be a personal thing that gives rise to a phenomenon that is dynamic or energizing.
We're tackling topics and telling the truth.
And I'm Keith Fitson.
I'm Rodrigo Ross.
And today, our topic is stepping on your tongue.
Stepping on your own tongue.
And so...
Which sounds quite violent and painful. But we probably should explain.
Well, with some of the stuff that's coming out of your mouth, it probably is a little bit painful. Because they say sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt.
I disagree. I patently disagree.
That is a total lie. Because, you know, when you break your bone heals, right?
Yeah.
But, boy, when somebody cut you with some words, man.
Well, you're right. That healing process is different.
And when you think about that, I mean, there's years people harbor bitterness around words that people have said to them.
Yeah, because if you break something, right, if there's a physical injury, you can see most times, right, like that the injury has occurred. But when it's a word kind of thing and it's internal and it's emotional, heck, sometimes you don't even realize that you were injured, nonetheless able to communicate that with other people that your words hurt me.
Because the words have power. They have influence. You know, they can oppress people. They can harm people.
Yeah.
Like all of that, you know, packaged in there together. And so, you know, we got to be careful with the words that come out of our mouth. And then sometimes we just can't be deprogrammed, right, to stop saying certain words. And we've been saying these words or phrases over and over and over.
Right. And sometimes you don't even realize they're offensive, right?
Exactly.
Like you've heard it so much that you become like nose blind. Like I think my son is to his room after football practice when he doesn't smell what I smell, like he's nose blind.
Sure, hold on, you're gonna leave baby boy alone. That's a good ripe smell right there. Ain't nothing like fall time and some good football ripe smell.
I'm getting a headache just thinking about it right now. It's terrible. But this whole night, they just kind of go nose blind. They don't even realize that they said something malicious.
Right.
So have you ever heard this term, putting your foot in your mouth?
Yes,
okay.
I've heard of that.
Well, the pause makes me wonder,
where the pause come from?
Foot in your mouth?
I don't know what you're about to say because I didn't do the research with you on this one right here. So help me with this one.
So there's this whole concept, right? When you're talking about stepping on your own tongue, it's synonymous with this concept that exists called putting your foot in your mouth. So the etymology, the origin of this whole putting your foot in your mouth is kind of gory, right? Actually, it came from, it's a metaphor for what is actually called foot-mouth disease, which happens to cattle.
Mm-hmm.
And in that disease process, it becomes very, very painful for the cattle, and it's deadly. Many times, cattle will die from foot and mouth disease. And so people started using that as a metaphor for the kind of painful things that are happening or can be produced when you put your foot in your mouth. But ideally, when you say someone put their foot in their mouth or someone tells you put your foot in your own mouth, that means you said something embarrassing, tactless, sometimes insulting, socially awkward, you know, that kind of stuff. So putting your foot in your mouth is synonymous with stepping on your own tongue, which most people have heard that. I put my foot in my mouth. Or you put your foot in your mouth.
What about peanut gallery? How have you heard using that term?
I have heard the term.
Okay.
I don't derive a positive connotation from it. When people talk about you being a part of the peanut gallery, that to me that says that you're just talking about something, but nobody cares because nobody feels that what you're saying is important or relevant.
Right. So that's how we understand that word today.
Yeah.
But you got to go back but the term originated back in the 19th century. It is centered around a genre of popular theater that featured like unrelated acts of comedy or something like that. Right. And the peanut gallery itself refers to that lower section of the theater that had cheaper seats, you know, which, you know, I think we understand that part.
Wow.
But it's where Black people say.
Oh my gosh. So you mean to tell me, and this is my own understanding of peanut gallery, but see how I was programmed that whenever I heard peanut gallery, it was synonymous to me with we don't really care what you have to say. It's not important and it's not relevant. And you're telling me the original concept of a peanut gallery was the lower, cheaper seat section where Black people sat? Yeah. And so is the connection that Black people don't really have anything important to offer? Like, oh my gosh, mind blown.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah. And doing the research on this right here, man, it was, and it's like, I gotta admit, like I saw some terms like, but dang, I'm just fine. Yeah. And I gotta recalibrate myself.
And I probably have said it and didn't realize.
Right.
Wow.
Because we don't think about 19th century, right? We think about today and how a term is utilized.
And words are not new. Right?
Yeah. But when we go back and look at the origin of our words and our phrases, man, I love this. It's a show on NPR where they talk about, the words, and people call in and they try to get definitions of words, and they take them all the way back. And it's like, because at certain points, there's original meaning, and then over time, it forms into something else.
Mm-hmm. I do it all the time because I won't be limited by the dictionary. So there's that.
Now, because you're a word lady now.
I will.
You have some words.
Come up with a word. I will. Or I would just make a word something else.
Something like CAUSENETIC.
Well,
that has a definition to it, though, right?
And we made it up. Like, just for full transparency, CAUSENETIC family, it's not in the dictionary. Yet, we applied to the Urban Dictionary. We got rejected.
Yeah, like 3-4 times.
But that's all right. We're going to keep trying.
Right.
And they're going to recognize it as a word.
Miriam going to
put it in there. But CAUSENETIC is really not a word. But that's okay. It works for us. So this idea of stepping on your own tongue. Mm-hmm. So I love her to death. I do. But I have a great aunt who, once again, she just speaks in a language that was prevalent during her time from her lived experience. And even to this day, I have to recalibrate her because she consistently refers to Asians as Orientals. And I was like, Auntie, Oriental is like a rug. That it's not people. Like we have to, and she's trying to reframe and trying to rethink. But it's difficult for her, right? And you have to tell her that's dehumanizing. And you have to, and sometimes I have to kind of make the connections for her between, okay, Auntie, remember when as a Black woman you were called colored or some other, derogatory or dehumanizing word? That is the same thing. And then she has this epiphany. And of course, you feel bad because that wasn't your intent. You thought you were using the right terminology. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't, but that is a very hurtful term for Asian Americans or for the Asian population, period.
And so here's a common word that is used really often: grandfathered in.
Okay, so is that bad? Is being grandfathered in? I don't know. I see that as you have seniority, you paid your dues, you've proved your worth, you have longevity, and so that's your just desserts, right? You've been grandfathered in.
Yeah, because you've been a part of these set of rules or laws or something like that. Yeah. And so therefore, hey, because you were a part of those, this new law doesn't apply to you in that same way. Yeah,
your legacy exempts you from it. So that's not necessarily is that a bad thing?
Yeah, so while America's 15th Amendment, gave Black men the right to vote in 1870, several states erected institutional barriers intentionally to allow Black men to be able to vote.
Wow.
Okay. So they instituted these expensive poll taxes, and I also had tests that they had to take that almost made it nearly impossible for Black men back then to be able to cast votes. Okay, because the same law would prevent some white men from voting too. The states went around, this by passing what's known as, we use the term, grandfather clause.
Okay.
So you were, there was a set of people that were able to do some things, gave some rights to Black men to be able to vote, but they didn't want to make it that easy for them. So therefore, they add these taxes and these tests for them. And so therefore, they were not grandfathered in like others. So code word right there is that whites, you can vote this way. New black men, now you have to do this to be able to vote.
Oh, so we always talk about the effects of racism on everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that feels to me like a perfect example. So you created this law, and in doing so, ideally you wanted to keep this population from voting, but you realized it was bleeding over into another population that you didn't mean for it to affect. So instead of getting rid of that law and letting everyone have that ability, you say, no, I'm just going to grandfather in the folks that I didn't mean to impact by this racist law. So you guys are exempt. And that's not necessarily how I saw grandfathered. I always looked at it in a more positive light, right? Like, okay, since you built this legacy, you don't necessarily have to participate in this or be affected by that. But there's another way to look at grandfathered in as well.
But it's time of going back to the origin of the word.
The origin of the word.
And again, we use things in a different context, but I think it's important to know where things originated from. That we can be careful about certain words, because those words could be triggers. So using a word like legacy may be a little bit better than grandfathered in.
Yeah. So the other thing that I notice sometimes how you can kind of get into really fuzzy spaces and step on your own tongue is when you culturally appropriate and you use a word that describes a very meaningful, impactful event or situation or set of occurrences for a certain demographic, and you water it down to mean right? So, for instance, the word powwow. Have you ever heard that? Be like, oh, let's go to the side and have this little powwow, right? And so people use it to just discuss something. Let's have this quick meeting, something really surfacey or whatever. But the reality is a powwow is a Native American term for a meeting or a council. Mm-hmm. And it is tied to a certain set of practices and traditions and deep, rich cultural iteration that we shouldn't use it. So, you know what I'm saying? Haphazardly, and people just throwing it out, and it's offensive. And I had a conversation with one of our staff members here in Dallas who identifies as Indigenous, and she was really talking about how she had to have a tough conversation with one of her colleagues because inadvertently, after a staff meeting, there were two people that were in the staff meeting. It was like, hey, can you guys stay back? I just need to powwow with you a little bit. And it just set her off.
So was it a low man on the totem pole?
Well,
another term that's used, it was right.
that is cultural appropriation. Like you are taking terms that have a rich meaning for Indigenous people, and you're making them, just flimsy to me, right? For lack of a better term, talking about words, right? Like you really taking the power and the heritage out of the word just for you to have a colloquialism,
right? And then as we have this conversation around diversity, a lot of times, different conversation, a term, and say, well, you know what? I don't see color.
So are you legally blind, or do you just have the wrong prescription?
That's kind of like what I'm thinking of. Like, what do you mean you don't see? Like, it don't even make sense.
But you know what?
If you're colorblind,
right? I met a person that was true. Right. When he told me he didn't see color, and it happened to be a white man, and we were talking, he said, "Well, I don't see color." And the hair, my hair stood up. Well, my real hair, not the hair that I had in that day, but my hair. Okay. But we moved on. But my hair stood up. And I was like, what do you mean you don't see color? And he was like, no, I'm literally I'm colorblind. I was like, oh. Well, most people don't mean it that way.
Exactly.
When they say they don't see color, what's your experience on what they mean when they say
that's black and white? Well, no, I'm sorry. Clearly, that's
they don't see color, right? Like I can tell your hair is standing up now, and you got your own hair on today, Keith.
This is all mine too.
This is all your own hair.
Would you like to borrow some?
No, because my hair that I have on today is very cute. Thank you very much. Yeah, you guys should see it. It's cute.
The whole world can see it.
If they can't see it,
it's made for audio podcast.
I would whatever. Don't talk about the obvious right now. It's whatever.
There's some more thoughtful ways that you may be able to say, instead of I don't see color, perhaps you can, be more thoughtful about what you say. Like, I try not to judge people by their skin color.
Yes, that's because the reality is, as a person of color, I want you to see my color. Like, I'm proud of my color.
Exactly.
I love it. I don't want you to judge me, and I don't want to have less access, and I don't want to have, other people controlling my lived experience because of my color. But I love my color.
I love my color.
I do. And I would imagine, I would venture to say that most people would say that, right? Like they're good with their color. No?
Yeah, I think,
maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe I just love mine so much. I just think everybody loves theirs.
Yeah, but we got to be careful. We're talking about, stepping on your tongue, right? Like, I was in a meeting just the other day.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a local known organizational meeting.
Yeah.
And I had went to visit, hadn't been there in several years. And the gentleman was like, we need people like you.
Okay. And what do you mean, sir?
Well, because he started stumbling over his terms. Like, wait for it.
Like, hold on. 3,
wait for it.
2.
But he kept stumbling. And I knew what he wanted to say.
Why did you let the man just stumble like that? You didn't want to help him out?
I didn't. I didn't feel
who's
that
stumbling now? No. So the answer will be no.
Yeah. There's a proper time to be able to follow up with that. Right
Okay.
And because I know that he meant well. Yes. He just didn't know the terminology to be able to say.
Yeah. It happens. Yeah. But this whole idea, this whole thing of stepping on your tongue, I will tell you, I was talking with a group of people. I don't even remember exactly where it was, but I remember the moment where as I'm talking, I had the thought, like, I think I lost them. So I was talking to them and kind of doing this speech. And in the speech, I talked about being confuzzled. And I think that to me, so that's another, you always talk about, I make up words. I do. I make up words because I don't feel like I should be limited by the dictionary. It just feels very limiting.
Yes.
Right? It's claustrophobic.
Yeah, we ain't gonna go by the dictionary.
We're not gonna just be limited by the dictionary. So I use the word confuzzled, which for me is a blend of confused and puzzled.
Okay.
I'm confuzzled. That means I'm a lot confused and a lot puzzled. Like,
that's a whole lot going on right
there. But when I said it, the people were with me, right? Sometimes when you're talking to a group of people and you can see and they nodding and you get eye contact and they with you. And then I said confuzzled, blank. And I was like, yikes, I lost them. I just had to go on my tongue. What?
Back up here a little bit.
And I couldn't tell if they were like, what is she talking about? Or does this lady know that's not a word? Like, I don't know which one
Probably
it was.
That is.
So, like, did she just say that's not a word? And so I had to back up, right, in the speech and in the talk or whatever, and talk about this whole idea. That's my own mesh of confused and puzzled. And then people got it after that, but I lost a little bit of momentum. So I kind of stepped on my tongue there because I was trying to introduce a word that made all the sense to me. But I was the only one. It made all the sense.
They were on the same page.
Well,
you
after that,
else.
we was all confuzzled. So see, I was right. There you go.
And I'm sure in conversations, terms like phrases like you're not really black, or like you're not black.
So when you say black more than one time, that makes you blacker?
Yeah.
Oh.
And like, or, you don't seem Asian to us.
Oh. You're not Asian enough?
Like,
that is definitely stepping on your tongue.
That
is so stepping on your tongue because it perpetuates stereotypes that even the person who is black or Asian or Hispanic
You're not
or
like
a
the
woman.
other ones.
Yeah, like, what do you mean? Like, what?
Help me.
Of course I'm not. Like,
Help me.
When you see one person, you see one person.
And, some of these terms or phrases that we use, and also is like, what's happening in your private conversations or in your smaller group conversations that, like, you're probably not going to say this in the workplace, but when terms like this or phrases like this come up in your private conversation, you know, how do you deal with those things?
Yeah.
Like, are you addressing those things?
Yeah.
And so do you let people get by with saying those things without, you know, pausing them? Hey, can you explain what do you mean by that?
Yeah. And how, you know, if it's happening a lot in a certain set of conversations, it's bound to slip out in what you would consider a more professional setting, right? And therein lies the problem. Like you can't be, and we've talked about this in other podcasts, you definitely want to be authentic. And sure, the conversations that you may have in the privacy of your home with your family may have certain nuances and themes and they may sound different than the ones that you have at work. But fundamentally at the core, your value proposition, your values are the same, that we try our very best not to use derogatory terms and step on our tongue. And so if you say that in those spaces and it comes out in a professional space, your inclination should be like, oh, I got caught, they heard me. Your inclination should be like, hey, what do I need to readjust in my value set? So I just stop saying it everywhere, right? Like don't have these separate competing,
because you're the same person.
You're the same person.
You're the same person that's at work, that's at home, that's in the restaurant on the weekend, while you're out with your buds
when
and
you
stuff,
buying shoes
with your family.
You gotta get a purse.
Like how do you correct your family?
Yeah, ooh.
You know.
Well, especially when they're like older, like grandmothers and aunts and uncles.
We got to check it all.
Oh,
we got to check it.
That sounds easy.
No, it's not easy.
It's not easy because.
But you have to be willing to adjust. You can't have knowledge and not use it. Okay. You can't have good knowledge and not use it.
Why not? Why can't you?
Well, we call that
because you said so.
We call that being two-faced.
Well,
if you're only one person, you can't have two faces.
Well, I mean, you can have like a daytime face, a nighttime face.
Well, I know, some people can make up a face.
They can have faces that don't even look. That's a whole different podcast.
But that inner core
under all of that, you still
that
the same
inner core
person.
is all the same.
Well, there.
Come on now, talk to me.
Pastor Vincent, please don't enter the space.
See, well, what I heard was
gracious.
Stepping on your tongue.
Well,
you better watch your mouth. What your mama say? I'm gonna get some soap and I'm gonna wash it out for you.
Come on, Pastor Vincent. I'll be here all week.
Hey, we gotta take the knowledge that we are gaining, especially now. We have a lot of diversity trainings that's coming up that's very popular right now, and it can't just be popular for right now. Yeah, it has to be there for the long term.
Yeah, and when you know better, you do better. There are lots of things that we say and that are accepted and mainstream, but then we learn, like you said, we learn the origins of some of this stuff, and you have this light bulb moment, like, I should probably stop saying that.
Because some of us probably need to pull out our policy books and just to read back over those and see what the language is.
See what the language is,
Is there undertone in there?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you think about, I think of a policy around tattoos, right? Like, that used to be a thing.
Right.
But today, like, everybody.
You try to exclude folks with tattoos, you severely limiting your
I got me some ink.
No, that was face painting. It's different.
Well, I posted on social media, so it must be real.
It's wow. I don't even really know what to say to that. What? There's a difference between ink and face painting, sir. When you took a bath, if it washed off, it doesn't
you know what?
count.
As soon as I laid water in that thing, it disappeared.
It does not count. You're fine. According to the employee handbook, you can stay. You're fine.
But we got to take that moment to look back at some things, like, why do we have certain systems in place? You know, what is the undertone of the words that we're using in our policy manuals and everything?
And in our branding and in our messaging, are we, putting our foot in our mouth, stepping on our own tongues in writing, right? Through our marketing efforts and saying things and putting out content and context,
right?
That are things, right? That are offensive. And that happens primarily because you don't have a vehicle for someone to lay eyes on that kind of stuff that can tap you on the shoulder and be like, you probably shouldn't say that.
and it's more than just the lawyer.
Yeah, right.
I understand the legalities of our policy books, but
absolutely.
we can use language within those policies, just make it seem much more friendly to those who are going to read it. Make sure it's not culturally sensitive to the multiple groups that that we employ.
Yeah, I'm so excited and so proud of how the employee resource groups that we launched here in Dallas are finding their way and weaving their way and showing their relevance for this organization in spaces like that. So our CMO, who also chairs our Hispanic and Latinx ERG called Campeones Unidos, but that team, she leads that team, and they are very intentional when they are going to put out some content or they are inferring some context or words and language around all kinds of stuff, particularly as we keep going in this DEI space and we're celebrating this and amplifying that and helping to educate people. They constantly use those ERGs to say, hey, this is what we want to say. This is what we're trying to say. Should we say that? Right. And there have absolutely been times when the ERG would come back and say, don't say that like that. Mm-hmm. I remember during the George Floyd stuff, and we were thinking about, should we make a statement? Should we not make a statement? Kurt Hazelbaker was very good about, let's bring our ERGs together, our staff members together. This is what we're thinking about saying. How would you feel if you saw that? And the feedback was that we shouldn't say it that way. We understand what you're trying to say, but how you're saying it is probably not the right way. And that's what employee resource groups should do. That's how they should interface, right? And help support the organization, help us avoid those potholes, and don't let us just step on a landmine.
Yeah, and you got to be able to have true, authentic conversations around this.
And value
when you
feedback.
say this, this is what it means.
This is what it means.
This is how we take. I know it sounds normal because we've normalized these different words.
But this is how we
things
take
that we've talked about. Yeah, like, and so we got to be able to bring these groups together so they can have authentic voice at the table.
And listen to your folks. Bring the voices into the space. Diversify the perspective. If you got the same people looking at it, then you're going to get the same thing.
All right.
Which is those words.
Come on.
Or you can get people like me that will introduce multiplicable into the conversation. It's not a word yet. I'm working on it. So, family, y'all think about what words y'all want to add to the dictionary. Don't be limited by the 6,000 pages of the dictionary with all those words, right? Don't be limited by that. And thank you for listening to CAUSENETIC.
Thank you. On this episode called Stepping on Your Tongue.
Subscribe and listen to us weekly.
And don't be shy. Give us a 5-star review.
How many 5s can we get?
They can keep listening. Give us a 5 every time.
And every time.
That's right.
5. And as always,
be dynamic.
Be phenomenal.
And be CAUSENETIC.